Hello, everybody. I'm Zach Schloman, class of 1987, law 1990. I'm a lawyer like Michelle, and I'm the director of entrepreneurship at Cornell, or as we like to call it, E@C. Thank you so much for joining us today for our latest webinar, brought to you by the Cornell Entrepreneur Network, CEN, Cornell Silicon Valley, CSV, the College of Human Ecology, and E@C. Cornell has some extraordinary entrepreneurs, as most of you know, and we're thrilled today to welcome Michelle Talbert. We have a special guest host, Rachel Dunifon, who I happen to know very well, who is the Rebecca Q. and James C. Morgan Dean of the College of Human Ecology. Before we start, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. Our format, as usual, today will be a conversation along with some Q&A. We'll be weaving in the questions that were submitted in advance, as well as taking your questions live. And as a bonus, Michelle has provided or is providing a bonus link that has a lot of questions and comments and answers that you can view separately. So let's get started. Michelle and Rachel, thanks and welcome to our show. Michelle is currently the founder of Her Power Space, among many other things. And she has built her career with what I would say is a pretty fascinating journey. We'll get into that during our conversation, obviously. As I mentioned earlier, Rachel is the Dean of the College of Human Ecology and a big supporter of entrepreneurship on campus. So with that said, Rachel, take it away, and I'll be jumping back on in just a little bit with some questions.
Thanks so much, Zach. I'm really happy to be here with all of you and participating in this fantastic event. The best part of which has been getting to know Michelle through our conversations. So Michelle, it's so great to have you here today and to talk with you. And I'd like to start by thinking a little bit about your early years and your journey to Cornell. And if I understand correctly, you were a divorced single mom with 2 kids. You were living in New Jersey and in DC, working a variety of jobs at the federal government and elsewhere, thinking about joining the Air Force potentially, and all that time taking night classes at community college to get your associate's degree. And then at age 27, you landed here at Cornell and spent the next 3 years with us. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that journey and how Cornell was fortunate enough to have you join us through that path.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks, Zach, for the introduction as well. And, you know, it's funny. I graduated high school when I was 17, and I went straight into the workforce. I did think I was going to go into the Air Force, but I actually went into federal government work and met who would become my first husband. We had kids right away. So by the time I was 22, I had these 2 young kids under 2, and I was already divorced. And I had started taking classes one at a time at the community college at night when I was pregnant with my son. And I just knew I wanted something more, but I wasn't sure what that looked like. But I was like, well, I'll just start taking classes that interest me. So a psychology class here, a sociology class here. Obviously, I'm a UMechie, right? So it's all these social sciences. I wanted to impact people, but I just didn't know what that looked like yet. And so for 10 years, and I have to say, I'm originally from New York. I'm from Queens, but we moved to New Jersey when I was like late in high school. And so after sort of years and years in community college, I was on the Honor Society, the Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society. And I thought I was going to transfer to GW in DC. I was 1 credit away from my associates. I had to take like a PE, which I put off for years and years, obviously, right? And I got a recruitment letter from different schools, and I would just throw them in this box. I wasn't paying attention. And then I got an envelope with some red letters on it. And it said, Michelle Talbert, would you be interested in coming to Cornell? So apparently different schools saw the listing of folks who got the Honor Society designation and said, let's recruit them. They could be possible candidates for our 4-year programs. Cornell was the only one that made me go, oh my God, I gotta apply. And the rest is history. I have been so excited to be a Cornellian ever since that day.
Wow, I love that. I love that story. And it's a beautiful sentiment about the importance of, you know, being open to those opportunities, you know, the random piece of mail that might come across your table and what that could mean for you. So I love that.
Speaking of random piece of mail, UPS just dropped off a package. I am here in the co-working space accepting mail for our clients as we speak.
Well, that's just to show that it can be really life altering.
Yes.
So you came to Cornell, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about your experience at Cornell, and especially if there are 2 or 3 people who greatly influenced your time here, and if you could reflect on what that was like a little bit.
Absolutely. So, as we said at the top, I was 27 when I came to Cornell. My daughter was going into 1st grade. My son was going into 3rd grade. And that was what we call the beginning of our 6-year odyssey. We were the 3 musketeers on this 6-year odyssey. I was going to spend 3 years at Cornell, 3 years in law school, and get back down to DC for my son to start high school, because I did not want to disrupt those 4 years. So we were on a mission, right? How many of you guys have been on a mission before and a plan? So we arrived in Ithaca. Cornell has on-campus student housing, which is amazing. And so I lived in North Campus in a place called Hasbrook, had a community center. They did activities for the kids. It was such a blessing to be in that community. And I went to school on my very first day, and I was all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and 27, right? And my first class, I'll never forget, in PAM, Policy Analysis and Management, and this like 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid stood up at the front of the room, and I don't remember the question that was asked, but he quoted Homer's Iliad. And I was sitting there, and I was like, the only Homer I can quote is Simpson. I have made a mistake. I have made a huge mistake, right? And so I didn't know it was imposter syndrome, right? I came in with all this gusto and zeal, and all of a sudden I was like, I'm 17, I'm 27, he's 17, he knows so much more, I'm out the fish out of water. And I kind of devolved a little bit that first semester. And about 2 weeks of not going to class, not combing my hair, I would just put the kids on the bus, lay down, and I had received a family scholarship through Human Ecology from an alumni who is named Ruth Spears Nixie, and she created a little stipend fund for any student in Human Ecology who may have a family. And I was super depressed. And as benefactors are known to do, she came to campus. And of course, the college said, Michelle, you have to meet with her. Right? She's giving you money. And I was like, are you serious? Okay. So I shoved my hair up under my hat. She took me to a really beautiful restaurant in the hotel school. And she poured into me, and I cried, and she got it. She graduated as a divorced single mom in the 70s with 3 kids, right? She got it. And because of her pouring into me that day and continuing through my education, I was able to get it together and be like, oh my God, I can do this. It can be done. And so that moment in my fall semester, first on campus, really changed everything, because Ruth gave me a role model and just bolstered me, and she didn't judge me for that space I was in at that moment. So that was really beautiful. And then Jerome Siegler was former Dean of Human Ecology. I actually called him Grandpa Z. And I would go sit in his office, and he always had beautiful English teapot and tea brewing, and we would talk. And he was so honest with me about my choices for my career. And I appreciated his honesty so much. There, I mean, innumerable people, but those 2 folks for sure just poured into me.
Hey, Michelle, I'm curious, what happened to the young student that cited Homer?
Oh my God, so we didn't work this out ahead of time. So 3 years later, happened to be like in a small, just like a small class and upper level class. And one of his classmates, meaning another freshman who was now a junior, said to me, oh my God, we all thought that guy was a pompous jerk. Okay. I was like, oh my God.
I was kind of hoping you were going to say that.
Imposter syndrome can take many forms, right?
That's good. Sorry, I had to just ask the question.
No,
Go ahead.
No, that was a great question. And that really is the punchline for that story.
Well, I love hearing, Michelle, how open you were to different types of mentors and being mentored, and how, it's a 2-way street with mentorship. And so the fact that you were open to those connections and them meaning something so much to you is really, I love to hear that. So I'd love to talk a little bit now about, after Cornell, the other part of your 6-year plan, where you went to UPenn for law school, and you were on a track, and you decided to become a corporate lawyer. Fun fact, Zach is also a recovering corporate lawyer as well. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, what your experience in law has been like and how that set you up for all the wonderful things that you've been doing since that time.
Well, I think for me, it's been this opportunity to sort of complete some things, right? So you get the undergrad degree, you get the law degree, doing that later in life, I felt like I had a little bit more control over what I was planning to do. And then when I got to the law firm, that was a piece I actually wasn't really prepared for.
Mm.
I just was on this journey, but for that piece of it, what would your life look like as a corporate attorney? I hadn't thought that piece through. And when I got there were things about it that I absolutely love. I love drafting, I love negotiating, but the thing that I love the most is going out and networking and what they call rainmaking. And when you're a second, third, fourth, fifth year associate, they want you in the office, like grinding, looking at walls and in the computer, right? And so for me, that was the piece that made me realize, oh, I don't think this is for me, but what can I take away? And the pieces that I've been able to take away, of course, critical thinking, relationship development, and my love of networking and connecting with people. So I was thankful for the opportunities that I had to attend events that enabled me to unlock that piece and realize, oh my gosh, you can actually make sort of a career out of this in and of itself.
And then in 2011, you evolved that, you continued to evolve and thinking about what the right path was, and you wrote a book. And that really kind of helped you set you on the journey that you've been on of recent. So could you talk a little bit about that book and how you came up with the idea and where you've gone with it since then?
Sure. That particular book is about online dating, specifically from the perspective of someone who's 40 and over, because by then it was my second divorce, unfortunately, right? And I was dating someone, we broke up, but then we came back together as friends and said, you know what, we have loads of kind of tidbits that we could share. So we self-published this book called Don't Do What We Did, right? And with that, I needed to find a way to market, because you're self-published, right? This is 2011. I happen to be on Twitter. And with Twitter came opportunities to sort of insert myself into conversations happening around dating and sex and love and relationships. And Ebony magazine from my grandmother's table, my mother's table, my coffee table, came into my inbox and said, we'd love to feature you. Well, I was hooked. So now I have the networking piece, I have the social media piece, and it's like, wow, look at all these ways to connect with people and share your message. And fun fact, don't necessarily use LinkedIn until you're ready to talk about your extracurricular activities. Because the partners are like, we saw you wrote a book.
Oh.
But with that, again, that helped me sort of decide, well, this is a defining moment. What are you choosing to do? And I chose to leave the law.
Hey, Michelle, I'm actually curious. So what did you actually do with Ebony?
We were featured on their website. They interviewed us. It was a Q&A, took pictures, and it went out to all of their readers.
And then was there any follow-up after that? Did you do anything more with Ebony going forward?
With Ebony specifically, no,
Yeah.
but I've been featured in Forbes and other publications. I've been a writer for Black Enterprise magazine and other online publications as well. So It just sort of was the opening to be able to just have other opportunities to be featured and to write and talk and all the things I love to do.
Okay. I mean, and this is one of the questions that came in earlier. So just let me interject for a second. Have you had, are you still in touch with the CSuite people at Ebony or some of these other magazines and social media outlets?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. And go ahead and ask the question.
No, I was just going to say, and how do you keep those connections alive?
No, that's a great question. Two things. First of all, the connection started because I showed up with value. So for instance, Black Enterprise magazine, I wrote for a long time. I was their social media correspondent. I went to the White House to cover different meetings and things like that for them. I reached out to the executive vice president then probably via 3 unanswered emails over the course of 2 or 3 months, right? And I realized, okay, he's not answering. What's next? I stalked or followed what he was doing on social media and saw that we were both going to be at a conference. So I went out of my way using my social media skills to highlight the things he was saying, what he was doing. I made my way to him and said, hey, I was just posting about you. This is great. I don't know if you remember. Boom, right? And sort of just adding value by amplifying his voice on my social media platforms, but then just also refreshing his recollection about the emails that I'd already sent. And I told him that, hey, I would love to cover what the Women in Power conference. And he said, sure, get back to me. And I offered to fly myself down here to Boca Raton from DC to cover it if they comped me the ticket. And that's how that relationship started. So I invested in the flight, but I never had to pay for another flight with them again after that. So for me, keeping connections begins with offering value, seeing what their needs are, meeting and exceeding those needs, and then continuing the relationship. And to this day, he's one of my mentors.
Nice.
That's a great, like, proactive, approach that like is thinking about your interest, their interest, and how they come together. And I'm interested. I mean, it sounds like you published this book, and then you had this really strong interest and skill in social media, and so those two things really dovetailed, it seems, to help you really get this really strong social media presence and your work focused on empowering women. I know you say from the bedroom to the boardroom. And so you've really been focused on these hot topics that we all face, such as relationships, sex, dating, single parenting, and love. And so can you talk a little bit about your strategy of using media, using social media, and using that in a way that empowers people and addresses topics that we sometimes, seem to shy away from?
Absolutely. And I think, I want to just kind of give this caution, this disclaimer. I have been willing to be more open about my personal life than most people would be comfortable. So I tell everyone, just share where you're comfortable. That's the first piece, right? And so for me, I took an approach that we're all whole women, speaking specifically to women. We're all whole women. Right. So what does that mean? That means that we have obligations both outside of our households and within our households. And for me, I wanted to focus on the relationships that we have with ourselves, that we have with the people with whom we cohabit, and then once we leave the house. And so dating, relationships, networking, business, all a part of that ecosystem of what does a whole woman look like when all of the relationships in her life, beginning with herself, are all in alignment. And that's why, to me, it's just very synergistic. Although it may seem like a scatterplot to others, it makes sense to me.
Hey, Michelle, do you think that there are benefits to sharing more rather than less? I mean, I know you mentioned it's a personal decision and a personal choice. It seems like your sharing more has been very helpful to you. I tend to be the same way. I like to share a lot. And I can't really figure out why, whether it's just my personality or whether it's getting benefit somehow, but I'm curious to know your thoughts on that.
I think that people have to share something, right? We no longer transact with the McDonald's of the world in terms of where we feel like we've made a connection. But watching a Ray Kroc movie, maybe you do feel a little bit more connected now that you know, oh my gosh, that's the story behind the business. So that is with every piece of our business and corporate journey, is letting people see enough of yourself to humanize you. And then you make that decision yourself. But there has to be a human element. I do believe gone are the days where you're just sort of we all know Jeff Bezos' business, whether we want to or not, and whether you like the person or not, you have to get to know them. And so that's right. My advice to people. Share where you're comfortable, but you have to humanize your brand unless it's a completely anonymous brand. And that's very, very rare.
Yeah. How about this one? It just came into the chat. It says, for someone starting out a small business, are there any concrete recommendations you would make to improve networking?
Yeah, absolutely. Start local to the extent that outside is open where you live. Find ways to connect with other local business owners. Meetup.com is a great opportunity to connect with folks because it is based on in-person relationships. So you can search, and it doesn't have to be for your business. You can search for things that are interest to you, because that's another way to make great connections with people, and business can flow from there, and you're in a comfortable environment to begin. Another way to do that is, if you have a brick and mortar business, invite people to your business, have open houses. If I'm in a corporate office park, I had an open house and had pizza brought in locally, local Black woman-owned pizza place 2 blocks away. She brought in the pizza. So find ways to set yourself apart, think creatively, and think creatively about things that are outside of just your industry, and make relationships that way.
Cool.
I love, Michelle, your really holistic view of us as people, and the private to the public and everything in between. That's a very human ecology mindset. So I can see you with that human ecology education very proudly in your life. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, what kind of initiatives you're most excited about right now. You've evolved, and you have this really focused, this really important mission about empowerment and the whole human. So what are some of the things you're focused on now, and some of the success stories that you're most excited about with your most recent initiatives?
Absolutely. When COVID hit, so I opened the doors of Her Power Space, which is my first brick and mortar space. And if it's okay, I'll answer a question that's in the chat from Gil. He said, what resources did I use to fund my business? If I had my wallet here, I would hold it up. I'm 100% self-funded, and just the work that I do on a contract basis, consulting and doing some legal work here and there, but please don't tell anyone, is what has funded my business until it was able to make money from our community of clients and customers. So that's what I did, Gil. So when COVID hit, I was only 3 months into business. And our community was very, very much in pain. And the PPP ran out, and a lot of things just kind of came at all of us all at once. And I launched something called the No Small Business Left Behind Summit series. And in the beginning of May, that first summit was 6 hours long. We had speakers coming in to talk about how to crowdfund your own PPP, talking about opportunities and ways to stay afloat. And to date, we've highlighted over 150 businesses through that initiative of No Small Business Left Behind. And then I also have the Unchamber, which was launched semi as an option outside of Facebook for business owners to come together on an online platform. And we continue every month to have meetings and highlight business owners who bring in resources for our community and share about great ways to succeed in small business. Those are really important to me. And I have women in our community that, through Her Power moves, walked into our first meeting in 2018 with no clients, no clue. And now they have a full roster of clients. They have full, calendars, and they understand what it takes to actually run a business.
How do you come up with the ideas?
If I say universe, and it's just kind of divine as part of it, the other part is interacting and listening to my community. A great example in the space, I have business mailing address services. During the pandemic, one of our clients said, hey, Michelle, can you scan my mail to me? And I was like, why didn't I think of that? Absolutely. So now that's an income stream for us, right? So you listen to what your customers say they want, and if it makes sense for you to be able to pull that into as vertical, absolutely.
Wow, scanning mail. I've actually never heard of that. So you open the client's mail and literally scan it to them.
Correct. And they receive it, and it's a touchless delivery system. And then they let me know, you want to recycle it, shred it, or just come in and pick it up another day. But people get their mail right away. I give them a picture of the front of everything that comes in.
Right.
But if they want it scanned, then they can actually buy into that service as well.
Nice. I have a related question. In terms of networking, you mentioned Unchambered. Do you have any experience with forum groups? So small pods that stay together and meet typically monthly. So there's like YPO, EO, Kindred. These are all forum groups for entrepreneurs or business folks. And I'm asking for a slightly self-motivated reason that we just started, Entrepreneurship at Cornell just started a forum group offering. for Cornell entrepreneurial-minded alumni, which we call the Cayuga Forum. We haven't launched it yet. Well, we launched it and we have about 100 people signed up. And we're going to form our pods very, very soon, like in the next couple of months, and actually launch the product. But I'm curious whether you have any personal experience with forum type programs.
Absolutely, I do. Two things, one short term, one longer term. So the shorter term was a lean startup competition that lasted over a weekend. So like a hackathon, right? We came together, you have to pitch your idea, the top 4 or 5 ideas that win, everybody then is broken up into groups and you have to operationalize that. So our team won that, which was an awesome experience. So that was a lean startup piece. The longer term, I did a 6-month program here under the University of Florida's Jim Moran Institute for Entrepreneurship. And they have 2 tracks in different counties around Florida, where they have a nonprofit track and they have a for-profit track. I did the for-profit track. We met every single week or 2. It felt like a lot. We met a lot. And we had different speakers come in. We got to know each other. We formed bonds within that group. And we just sort of learned and boot camped our businesses. Right. And then those relationships continue formally and informally after that. I think masterminding is a concept that's been around for a very long time and has been spoken about in Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich book quite extensively. It is the best way to bring new energy to your business and new thoughts and new ways of doing things to expand beyond your own limitations and to pour into other business owners with your own life experience. I think they're a great resource.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons why we launched the forum was to allow alumni to do what I call peer-to-peer coaching, where you have this small group that becomes trusted over time. It's not like you automatically trust everybody, but over time, this trust builds up. And our goal really is to get people into these pods and have them, interacting for years, like not just about business, but personal, family, business interests as well, over time. So it's an experiment, but we hope it works out well.
And that's our model for her power moves. We have 3 chapters. We have Broward, Miami-Dade, and Jacksonville. And then we have women all over the world who are connected to us online. But those 3 chapters, when we were open, met in person, and then we all stay connected online.
Yep, excellent. Sorry, Rachel, I didn't mean to hijack.
Oh, not at all. No, this is great. So Michelle, when I think about your journey that you're describing it, I hear, some things that really stand out to me are you listening to others, being open to others, pivoting when, crises or issues come up, you're able to pivot quickly and really always evolving. So I'm just curious to hear now, if you look forward, what are a couple of areas that you love to focus on in the future? And where do you see yourself making an impact in some emerging or new areas for you?
For me, and I'm going to say it's one, because it's weighty. I don't need another outside of this. For me, if I had my druthers, I would be able to travel all over the country, working with teams, corporations, business owners, and others, helping them create safe spaces for their teams, employees, to be able to have conversations that are not necessarily easy, but are necessary to ensure that everyone feels included. This is like the DEI conversation, diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? I focus on the inclusion piece. How do you have an organization where people feel safe around each other, where there are boundaries that are set and everyone understands them and everyone takes responsibility for their own actions and for keeping each other accountable? What does that look like? Because to me, that looks like a relationship that's built in safety, no matter where it is, whether it's in the workplace or at home, right? And I think sometimes we tend to divorce who we are when we step out of our door. And we take all of our personality with us. And if you are working closely with someone, it's going to come out at some point, right? So why not be able to sort of prophylactically identify topics, create opportunities and have communicative tools to ensure that you're successful. Because when people are happy in the workplace, it's not about money. After a certain point, you find the research shows time and time again, you max out on the money and people are still miserable and leave, right? And it's not about that piece, it's about feeling vested in their environment. And the way to feel vested is to feel included. And so for me, that's what that looks like to me. I call it safe spaces. Other folks call it DEI. I don't care what you call it. Let's just do it, right? And do it well.
I call it life skills, right? This is about
right?
being a human and being ourselves and having those conversations, even if they're difficult, and being able to do it with skill and respect and empathy.
Right. Recognizing our privileges and recognizing our hurdles. And there are tools that you can put in place. I've actually done it with groups that you can help barriers to sort of, begin to shrink because people go, oh, I see the humanity in you.
Yeah, I think that human piece is actually super important in all types of relationships. I'm going to move that concept of humanity into how do you deal with C-suite people compared to other people? Like, do you have different strategies? Do you treat them all the same? I mean, I asked this very directly because I tend to treat people all the same. Rachel knows this. I mean, she's on my board of directors for my program, and everyone goes by first name basis, and it's all very casual, direct conversation. It seems to work out well. I don't know if that's luck or whether it's just I have a lucky group of people on my board. But I'm curious how you actually do that and what advice you should give to others.
And to me, what I hear in that question is an underlying thought about positions of power. That's really where that differentiator gets made, right? Because if I'm an entrepreneur, people who walk in this space, if our energy doesn't match, I'm okay repelling who doesn't align with our community. But I am in a position of power in these doors because all money isn't good money, right? We've already identified that piece. So when you are interacting with someone and they are in the C-suite and you are not, or not yet in the C-suite or more junior in the C-suite, there is that tendency, just like with a mentee and a mentor, to feel like there's a superior, sort of inferior, subordinate, supervisor relationship. The goal here is to find commonalities in the humanities. So I don't want to give that short shrift. What I'm saying is to talk to people, ask to take them to coffee, pay for the coffee, even though they make more money than you do. What a concept, right? They're going to offer, let them pay for it. But you offer first. There are ways to show up and stand apart because you're not behaving in a way that most people behave. And so if you can capture opportunities to be different, people will notice. And then you get the other opportunities to excel in your workplace if that's your goal.
Right.
That's my take on it. And that's what's happened and was beneficial to me in a corporate environment. But I had to get there, right? Because I already talked about imposter syndrome. I had to get to that place. But it took a little while. But when I got there, man, I got it and it worked. I brought opportunities to my partners for them to shine.
That's actually great to know. A couple other questions, if you don't mind, or Rachel, jump back in whenever you like. We should make this as interactive as possible.
No, go ahead.
So we had a bunch of questions, Michelle, that came in from the people who registered in advance. So I'm going to take a couple of those now, and we'll just see where it goes. So here's one. It says, how do you ask people for favors and investment for your own ventures without ruining relationships?
Okay, so the assumption there is that there is a relationship, right? And so if there is a relationship, then it should be mutually beneficial. And therefore, are you asking for a favor or are you inviting them to an opportunity? Because if you shift the understanding of what their needs may be, and then position yourself, if you really believe that there is value to them, to invest. I mean, investing time, money, if we talk about ROI, returns on investment, right? So I'm an investor, I'm not doing you a favor, I'm investing in your business and you better get a return that's in alignment with my goals. So that's how you approach it. You're bringing value. You're giving them an opportunity to buy into something. But you also have to understand that if it's a super personal relationship, you have to be very clear that people understand and expectations are set, especially. But if it's a relationship, then it should be mutually beneficial. That word relationship means how we interrelate with one another, not just how you give or someone only receives. It's mutual exchange.
Gotcha. That's great.
Michelle, I also wanted to follow up on that with combining a couple of questions that we got submitted in advance. So something we were talking about before this began, Michelle, was the idea of being an introvert and what this type of networking and these activities look like for those who are introverts. And so how do you think about making these strategic connections for those who are introverts? And especially, making that initial connection can be one thing, but the follow-up without, doing a follow-up with confidence, but without being annoying or being worried about being annoying is sometimes the struggle for people, maybe especially when they're more on the introverted side.
Absolutely. It's funny because introverts, you would think, would excel in environments where we can't be in person face to face. But for some introverts, it's even more pressure because they're putting so much pressure on themselves about, number one, not contacting people too much, or number two, what are the words that I'm saying? Are they right? Are they okay? And overanalyzing that piece of it. So I have so much utmost respect for introverts. Thank you for just getting out of bed and trying to interact with people. We applaud you. I'm serious. It can be rough, right? So for me, I find that the advice that I love to give to introverts is to be very well prepared and understand your needs, your ask. You understand your needs, your asks, and your goals. And in person, once you get to that event, if you've achieved those goals, you can leave. As soon as you feel uncomfortable, leave. You don't have to knuckle through or put yourself through a whole lot of pressure to go to an event and continue to press palms if you're not comfortable. So if you set your goals ahead of time, I know that I go to this event, I want to meet Zach. I know that if I go to this event, I want to be able to speak with the conference organizers because I'd like to be on the stage. Yes, as an introvert, you'd like to be on the stage, right? So that's in person. If you are doing this in written correspondence, it depends on how you've connected with them. If you're connecting on social media, see what they're posting about. Again, see what they care about. See what matters to them. What are they talking about? And then incorporate that into your correspondence with them electronically. There is nothing wrong. There's a new thing that a lot of people say these days, which is, hey, just bumping this up in your inbox to make sure that you didn't miss it. I actually missed responding to someone's email today, as I mentioned earlier, and I feel terrible about it because I saw it started and then didn't get back to it. It happens. We get busy. Don't worry about the part about being a pest. Honestly, in some cases, if they feel like you're being a pest, they'll say, unsubscribe, delete, stop messaging me. Typically, a no response is I just didn't see it. I didn't get to it. It's not necessarily a high priority. And if that's the one, then just give it a little bit more time, bump it back up in there, and maybe change a little bit of your verbiage, say something a little differently, see what else they've been talking about, give them a new hook, change the subject line, whatever that looks like. But if you're pouring into them, people respond to what they have value, where they find value.
What mentality helps you overcome rejections?
Jack Daniels? No, I'm just kidding. Seriously, overcoming it is probably an overstatement. Maybe incorporating it and thinking about how I can do things differently going forward. I have a big ego. I'm not going to lie, right? And so if I get rejected, the goal is to not take it personally, take it professionally, all of that stuff, whatever. The reality is, what can I learn from it? I don't know that it ever stops stinging. It might just sting a little less. That's my truth. There might be people who are like, I don't care what anybody says. I'm not that person. I do care, but I do not let it debilitate me or keep me from moving forward. Yeah. That's the key. That is the key. However you interact with that rejection emotionally has to kind of be tempered with, but I still have to keep moving forward because I believe in this dream. I believe in this goal. It was given to me. I'm gonna find a way to get this done.
Yep. I mean, do you sometimes look at what other people might view as a rejection and just not view it as a rejection? So somebody says, I don't have time now, or, I mean, and maybe it's just easier to brush it off and say, listen, I mean, people don't have time for me. Like that's okay.
Well, yeah, every no is not necessarily a no. Some is a not right now. Some is timing. So I gave a presentation in the December of 2018 or 19 to a really large organization. It was like 3,000 people. And I followed up. We had a great communication following up. And about 6 months later, I pitched myself again to that person for a different product, for a different presentation topic. And I didn't hear anything. And I reached out maybe one more time. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna move on. Because now this was my take on it. We already now have a relationship established and you're not replying. Maybe it wasn't as great as I thought it was, or you said it was. Okay, I'm gonna let that one sit. Do you know, February of 2020, or maybe March, whatever it was, she reached out to me earlier this year. We're in 2021. I don't know what year we're in. And said, Michelle, I just came across this email you sent me like a year ago. Can you please come and talk to our audience again? So sometimes it's just an oversight, right? But you have to keep moving forward. Did it stop me from being on other stages? Absolutely not. And I was so relieved when she came back around. But the reality is we're all overworked. Most of us say last year, we're talking about 2019, right? So it's a lot for a lot of us going on right now. So you have to kind of understand that everything's not about you. I think that's the best advice I was ever given. Don't think so highly of yourself, that every interaction that you think that someone is thinking about you as much as you think about yourself.
Right. I mean, given that, I mean, you come across as a very confident person. Do you think of yourself as a confident person? And I know it sounds like a silly question.
It's not.
But I'd love to hear your take on that.
I think of myself as a holistically confident person, but are there pieces of myself that I am not as confident in? Yes. When I'm speaking, I'm pretty confident. I don't think I need to go into what I don't feel confident about myself with, and I'm confident to say that. But what I am confident about is knowing that I am really good at helping people forge relationships. Yeah. I'm good at formulating strategies. I love to talk. I love to interact, and I love to help people. The things that I'm not great at, I don't think they need as much attention in my life, right? Yep,
absolutely. So how about this one from the chat? It said, what helps you power through imposter syndrome? And the person writes, this is Matt. He says, I often have self-doubts and understand it's a continuous exercise. So what helps you power through it?
What helps me a lot is having great peer relationships and people who know me, and also having what they call an atta-girl file. So or an atta-boy file in your case, right? So what that is are testimonials, employee reviews, things that other people have said about me that are great. They're like, we really like you. Sally Fields, I'm dating myself. You really like me, right? To be able to refer back to that is kind of pouring into myself a little bit from an external perspective, even if my internal needs a little bit of time to catch up with that in that moment. What I also find is very helpful is building the success muscle in a particular endeavor. So starting small, we don't walk into the gym for the first time in 6 years and think we're gonna bench 250 pounds. We work up to that. It's the same with success. Set a small success, meet it, get a little bit of wind beneath your wings, go on to the next goal. Incrementalism, I think, has been very helpful for me, myself, in building my muscle. I used to shake and quiver and sweat, and my palms were sweaty, public speaking, and I absolutely thrive off of it now because I continued to do it, even though I was afraid, even though I thought everybody was staring at me, I had lipstick on my teeth, whatever it was, whether it was true or not, didn't matter. The point was I still showed up. And if you can just show up, that is a little success to celebrate in and of itself.
Yeah. So we had a bunch of questions submitted in advance for people that were either switching careers or thinking about switching careers. So I'm just going to read one of them, and this covers a couple of the different questions. It says, I'm changing career directions in a new field for me, for which I actually went back to school for, and need to make new contacts in this new area. How should I credibly find new people?
Absolutely. That's a great question. No, that's a great question. And I think that this is actually a strategy that's been around for ages, and it's called informational interviewing. When you reach out to people who are doing something in a field that you have an interest in, reach out to them and either offer to buy them coffee, offer still something of value, right? May I take you to coffee? I am looking to make this transition into your industry. I see that you are the top bloody hoo-ha what, because people love to talk about themselves. I would love to learn more about your journey. What have you found? Again, making it about the other person, but you'll still get a lot of value from that, plus forge a great relationship. One of the best ways to stand apart is to be different. One of the best ways to be different is to talk about the other person instead of yourself. That really leaves an impact on people. And so if you are transitioning into a new industry, reach out in a way that's not salesy. It's not, I'm trying to get a job from you. It's not, I'm trying to sell you my widget. It's, I'm trying to learn more about your journey because I'm really intrigued or interested in this industry and I'd love to make an impact. You see how that shifts the conversation.
Yep. How about, do you, this is not, I'm not plugging Cornell, but we do have a great network at Cornell.
I do. I plug Cornell every day.
Yeah, I mean, well, of course I do all the time too, but I mean, do you use that Cornell connection actively? Have you seen people use it? I mean, in my job, I tell students to use it all the time. I mean, like,
use what?
To utilize the Cornell network. Like, find somebody at that new company you want to get involved with that went to Cornell, reach out, use the Cornell to Cornell connection.
Sometimes on LinkedIn it shows up, right? Or if I just happen to know that somebody went to Cornell, I might reach out and say, hey, do you know such and such? They graduated, you're here. If it's a new person, sometimes I'll use the Cornell connection, but not as much. It's more becomes a fun fact that gives us a quick affinity, but it's not always the thing I lead with.
I always call it the false sense of Cornell trust. Like, oh, I went to Cornell, you went to Cornell, you must be okay.
Right.
So it is an interesting touch point. Here's a tricky question. Can you share the best icebreaker type of questions or comments you might make among people you don't know? So you're at a conference and you try to meet somebody. Is any tips for getting from point A to point B?
Yeah, I actually have a visceral reaction to people asking me what I do. And if I'm in a smart ass mood, hopefully I can say that particular phrase here.
That's fine.
I will say, for what? For fun? For money? What are you asking me, right? How about instead, what brought you here today? Is there a particular speaker you're interested to hear? What industry are you in that made you find this of interest? That's a shift. It's not what you do, it's what are you interested in? Right. And so changing the conversation, that tweak in and of itself is something that I really do all the time. And it's a totally different conversation. I might never know what that person does. Who cares? We're at this place together. We both have an interest and we take the conversation from there. Yep.
Somebody else asked, it's just a random question. How many people do you have on your team, your work team, that are assisting you?
Yeah, for her power space, I have 4 independent contractors who we call concierges of the day, notaries, etc., who are on call. I'm here every day. If I have something else to do, then we have a concierge of the day. I'm looking forward to firing myself from that because I have definitely given myself a job. Right. But also I have a VA. We have a call center here relationship. So certain sales calls and things of that nature can be made out. I'm big on outsourcing as much as possible. And then with our Her Power Moves community, we have FemForce leaders. in each of the chapters. So they lead those chapters and I lead the overall vision of the organization. So delegating as much as possible, but often I do a lot of it. And that's just a lot of trial and error. And standard operating procedures have saved my life in this last year, creating systems like how do you open the door? How do you turn on the lights? So, just literally being able to hand that to someone so that it gives a seamless presentation to our customers and clients when they come in the doors.
Yeah. Now, I know that your children are now adults, like I forgot how old they are.
30 and 32.
Yeah.
And my grandson is 8.
Have you been able to pass down this advice to them? Like, do they actually look at you as a guru in this area?
My son called, I put myself on mute when we first went live. I was like, he actually just launched a catering company himself. He lives in Montana. So he's an entrepreneur. And my daughter just got her master's in social work from the Howard University in Washington, D.C. this May. And what was interesting and actually made me cry was when I got back from her graduation, my son texted me early in the morning and said, Mom, do you realize that each of your kids took your journeys? And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even think about it. One did all education, the other one's entrepreneur, and they were with me the whole time in both parts of that journey. So the kids pick up what they pick up along the way, don't they?
Well, it sounds like they picked up the right stuff. That's actually great. Here's one. It says, how to restore an opportunity. I'm just looking right at the chat. It says, if someone has brought value and only positive reviews to a consulting opportunity, but someone who is no longer at the company ended the opportunity because of a concern raised over missed payments at a last minute cancellation, opportunity was great and the concern for payments will never be raised again. I'm not quite sure what the question is. I think they're asking how to restore that opportunity.
Well, can I talk about reputation? Maybe
that'd be super.
So I have different mentors. I have coaches, consultants, and mentors, right? And so with the mentor, they typically walked in your footsteps, or you're walking in theirs, and they're guiding you, and typically not necessarily paid. My coaches and consultants are paid, and they might take either a more of an academic approach, et cetera, to teaching and guiding. And so with that, I've had a mentor in the past who had an 8-figure business and literally had a $5 million contract. And early in that contract, something went very left. And he, as the CEO, made it his business to reach out to the client to restore the relationship, took full ownership. And this is a reputation piece. So it doesn't matter what the issue is. If you lose or potentially lose an opportunity, take ownership. Talk about how it won't happen again, the things that you've put in place to avoid that happening again. And if it goes away, that's fine. Lesson learned, implement the systems to keep that from happening again. And that goes forward with the reputation of any business or business owner.
Yep, that's great.
Apply that broadly.
So we have another question. It might be our last one that came into the chat, which I love. It says, how does one go about getting a mentor who wants to invest in you as a person?
So you see this question, you're asking for an investment. What will you invest into your mentor? What is it that you could possibly bring to your mentor's life that will make their life richer for having the opportunity to mentor you? And again, it doesn't have to be that cup of coffee or financial. It could be that you actually implement some of the advice that they give. There's this term called an ask hole, someone who asks and asks and asks and asks and never actually implement. That will turn off a mentor very quickly, right? Are you in alignment with what their interests are for this phase of where they are in their career, their business, their life? And then show that value to them. Are they at a place where they feel that they can pour back into you? And how about this? Do you have mentees? I guarantee there's someone in the world who would love to be in your shoes right now, even if you don't want to be in them. There's someone who looks at part of your journey and says, you know what, I'd like to be there. find that person, pour into them, see what it takes to be a good mentor, and then turn around and do that to help your mentor mentor you, right? That's synergy. That's investing in each other, not just investing in you.
Michelle, thank you again for joining us today. Go Red. I love that.
All the places you'll go when you go to Cornell.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me, Zach, and the dean
Absolutely.
and everyone who worked hard to put this together. Amanda, everyone, thank you.
Yeah.